So I wanted to bring something super sensitive for many of us today. And then this is the whole idea around office politics. So most of us, especially as women, we have a very allergic almost reaction when it comes to thinking about office politics alone. Because damn it, your work should just speak for itself, right? I mean, that's what we've been taught over and over and over and conditioned since birth. But many of us that have been in this world for any length of time, you know that's simply not the case. But I, for many years, wore it as a badge of honor to not even recognize that office politics even exist, let alone play the game. And so I want to share a story with you of how that really fucking backfired in my face and what I learned from that experience, and then why I teach this in the way that I do today. So if you're joining us now, drop in the chat where you're joining us from. Love to know where you're at. Definitely let me know. That way we can understand a little bit more about where you're at in the world, what you're dealing with, and we will go from there. So my own story when it came to office politics is I got a invite from someone from my prior life to actually move to a part of the country that I had no desire to move to. But I did so anyway because of this amazing project. So I was given the opportunity to go into an organization and absolutely pull off the fucking impossible. And I was able to give this opportunity to do this. It was an 18-month project, and they wanted me to pull that off in 5 months. And I was like, absolutely, like it sounded like a dream, right? So I was willing to sacrifice going to a part of the country I had no desire to be in and actually do just this. Like they wanted a killer. They wanted someone to come in there and crush it. They wanted a badass to come in there and actually produce for them. It's like, hell yeah, sign me up. Like how many times in our careers do we get to go in and absolutely build something from the ground up like that? So I went into the organization and I did just that, lady. I mean, I went full steam ahead. I did everything. I absolutely crushed it. But what I did do in addition to that is I alienated every single person in the organization along the way. And the reason I did that is I didn't think I had the time or even the benefit of building out relationships because I was under such a tight deadline. Like I didn't even think about that, right? Unless that person could help me pull off the impossible, I didn't build a relationship with them. I had no desire to do it. And so I do the exact impossible. I pull this shit off in 5 months. And literally just a few weeks after I pulled this off, got phenomenal results, got amazing response, from the people that were actually consuming, the features of this that I built out. I legitimately got a pink slip, right? Thanks for all your hard work, but here's surprise, surprise. No one in this organization likes you at all. I was legitimately told this. Like, it doesn't matter how amazing a job you did. No one likes you. You're not seen as a team player. Nobody wants to work with you. And I was like, what the actual fuck? Like, I just spent all of this time doing this. So I did what many of us do. And I went into that rut for a while, like, oh, are you kidding me? Like, and I was very much in victim mode. I was very angry. And then I really sat back and examined the whole situation, like what I did, where I missed the mark, where I fucked it up, totally just sat in it. And it is from that I realized, like, it's so much more than your work, right? And your work, I'm going to say this, will never, ever, ever speak for itself. Right, wrong, or indifferent, lady, these are the rules of the game. Your work never speaks for itself. And for so many of us that are challenged by that, I want you to really think. So go ahead and drop in the chat right now. When at any point in your career has your work ever spoken for itself? Ever at once? And every single woman that I challenge on this, every single woman in the workplace, a badass just like you out there dominating in corporate America, they'll start to answer these questions, and then I will legitimately just ask, the questions back, and we always arrive to the same conclusion. Their work didn't speak for themselves. Either they were talking about the amazing results that they were pulling off, or other people were talking about the amazing results they were pulling off. But the project alone, the work alone, did not give them the influence and did not give them the relationships that they needed. And my friend, that is all office politics is. It's just influence and relationships. So I want to challenge each of you again. So now that we know like the basics of what office politics should be, right? The very real repercussions of my personal story of how it doesn't work to not play the game. I really want to challenge you around this whole concept when it comes to office politics and really start thinking that through. So at any point in your career, I want you to drop in the chat, have you ever asked someone to come in and interview in an organization because you had a relationship there? So what I mean by that, did you help a friend get a job where you work? If you're saying yes, my friend, you played office politics. How about any time that you've brought in a consultant from the outside that you knew from your past life and you got them hired on as a consultant at your organization? That's office politics. How many times have you ever sang the praises of a coworker that's saying, hey, look at what Sally did in her, with sales and marketing. She crushed it. That's office politics 101. So whether you like it or not, you're already playing the game. So what I want to give you today are the basic tools where you can do that in your favor, and you can do that in a way that stays true to your values, that doesn't make you an asshole, that doesn't make you, have to stoop to the level of what most of us associate with office politics, and that's just people not acting right? People not doing right by others, people making inappropriate jokes, all of that stuff, going out drinking with a boys club. That's not what I mean. So I want you to wipe your mind from that. So let's concentrate first on commanding our power. So this is the PowHER formula for success that I talked about earlier. So anytime in your life, anytime that you've revisited any type of leadership theory, right? Anytime that you start really like just learning about that at a leadership conference, a podcast that you've listened to, a webinar that you signed up for, or a book that you're reading, and then you'll notice 2 weeks later, you're like, I have no fucking clue what I read. Like you're just kind of, you go up on a high, like, oh, I can do this, this latest be a servant leader bullshit and all of this. And then 2 weeks later, you're right back in the same rut. And the reason that none of those programs work for you, the reason none of that has worked is because they're not addressing commanding our power. And that is our mindset. So for those of us that are women, this whole idea around office politics and self-promoting is allergic and almost every fiber in your being gets really upset when you think about this concept, because you have been conditioned since birth that the world is a fair place. People should see what you're doing and reward you for it. You should help others along the way. And I don't disagree with that, but I'll tell you 9 times out of 10, when it comes to you making sure someone else is successful and making sure you are successful, when you have to pick between the two, you choose you. And the reason you have to is, I don't know, this whole idea around golden handcuffs, feeding your family, right? Like everybody, we all want to make time to mentor others. We all want to do that, but it is 1000% your responsibility and your responsibility alone to ensure your own career success, right? And that is from telling people what you're doing. That's from self-promoting. So I see this a lot in 2 different buckets of women. The first bucket of women that I see this with so much more than any others, and it is those that have really specialty niches that they do, right? So these are people like your finance folks, your technology folks, the people that do content design, user client experience, all these things that really forces you to narrow down, really focus on one specific item, and that makes you incredible at what you do. The downside of that, it is really hard for you to see how other people's work actually impact you, because you were so far down the rabbit hole of this very specialty niche. So this concept alone, outside of societal conditioning of you as a woman, right? Not self-promoting the way you see a lot of the men in your workplace do, but then you have this whole extra layer of being very niche, very specialized, very high value skill that you bring to the table, right? For those of us that were in things like operations, you're in sales, you're in marketing, you're, all of those that are more generalized. I'm not discrediting what we do. Those are very fucking hard roles. We've all done them. It's a little bit easier for us to see how other people's work impacts the value of our work. That's not to say it's still not a battle, but we do have that leg up, right? That is one thing that helps us, okay? And the other bucket of women that I really see this in is, it's relevant to us that started out our careers. If you're in your late 30s, you're in your 40s, you're in your 50s, many of us got brought up in workplaces that are very hierarchical. They're very traditional, right? And then you were taught from the time you got your first big girl job and you go into these careers that your leaders are the ones that make you successful, right? The servant leader, if you think about when all of that really hit the market and it was all the rage, that was when most of us were going into the workplace. And again, we already know, great in theory, very rarely happens in real life, simply because there's not enough hours in the day and people have to do what's best for them. They have to continue to feed their families, okay? So within those two buckets, right, on top of being a woman, this is why you immediately have that reaction. And the whole idea for us as women, and even though more so for those, groups that are even more marginalized, right? I'm speaking very polarizing terms, men and women. We know there's plenty of other buckets that have privilege or the lack thereof, right? The whole concept that, we have to work twice as hard, 3 times harder, 4 times harder, all of these things to even get the same results. Of course, that's a philosophical problem in your heart. Why wouldn't it be? Right? But you have to wrap your mind around the whole idea that office politics does not mean selling your soul. Until you get right with that, until you really understand it, all the how-to in the world, which is what I'm getting ready to go to, which is all that stuff that you had before, right? The whole reason, all of these other mechanisms, all of these other framework when it came to dominating like a badass that you are, every leadership development theory you've ever read, is where they're going to go first. But that's why if you don't completely wrap your mind around office politics does not mean you're an asshole, like if you're playing the game or that you're, not staying true to your values, this next step's not going to work for you, okay? You're going to go out there, you're going to try it, it's not going to feel good, you're going to feel really unauthentic, okay? So the next step in the PowHER formula for success is demanding your power, okay? Earlier, it was all about the mindset, commanding our power, the how-to. Now we're talking about actually how you pull this shit off, right? Because you have now broke up with the whole theory that office politics means selling your soul. We know that's not true. You're already playing that. You're already helping it, and you're using it for good, right? Because that's how we get more than 20% of women to that table so we can build workplaces that are more inclusive. So this step in the actual how-to is once you have your mind wrapped around that, what I'm going to challenge each of you to do. So I know this one's very, very challenging and I'm going to do it for a reason. It's because I didn't do this very early in my corporate career and it really sabotaged me. So I want each of you to think about who your office nemesis is at work. Okay, so drop in the chat if you know who that is, right? He's like, of course, don't drop their name, but put in there a big hell yes. If you have an office nemesis, I promise you do. This is that person that as soon as you get on a Zoom call and you see their face, you're like, oh my God, do I have to stay on? You want to turn your video off. The very sound of their voice is like nails on a chalkboard. Drop in the chat, say, yep, I have one of those, and I promise you that you do. What I want to challenge each of you to do with that nemesis is to get off site and go break bread with them. Yes, I said it. I want you to actually befriend and make peace, extend an olive branch to your office nemesis. Here is why. The only reason that person is truly your office nemesis, you want to know why? Because they have more relationships and more influence than you do. That's the only way that they're able to make your life the living hell that they do. And you can fight them every step of the way. You can try to prove that they're a fraud. You can certainly do all of that. I promise you it will not work. Why I know that? I tried it. I did just that because the last thing I wanted to do at the time, what I felt like was give that office nemesis the win. You're not doing that with this, because what you're doing is you are literally getting off site and you are breaking bread, right? So you get the win of not having this constant barrier in your way, right? No matter what idea you throw out, they're shitting all over it. No matter what initiative you do, they're downplaying the results of your department. No matter what, as long as they keep more influence, more relationships than you do, they will have the power to do that. So by you getting them essentially on your side, you reclaim your power. All right? You do not have to agree with their tactics. You do not have to be their best friend. All you do, get them off site and say, hey, Sally, let's be real here. There's a lot of tension between us. We know that no matter what, there's something went wrong along the way. What I want to do today is I really want to put that shit behind us, because you know what? At the end of the day, you and I, we're spending 50 hours a week at this place, right? I know how much this career means to you, how much this organization means to you, and I want to let you know I'm on your side, because I want you and I to absolutely crush it, okay? You use that type of verbiage because you're bringing it back to something objective, right? You're calling out what it is. You're being real. You're being raw, right? You're showing your human side. And then you're showing them, you're literally pitching them on what they get out of it, right? And you're getting them to bring their guard down. Because I promise you, those people, if they're the true office nemesis that are playing the office politics, that malicious way that makes you have that allergic reaction to, they're a miserable person. Right? And one human being to another, you don't want that. You don't want another human being to feel that way, to actually go through that. So I encourage you to do just that. And the return that you're going to get on doing this very challenging exercise, I promise you, is tenfold. So one of our clients, as soon as she came into the program, she immediately started talking to me about her office nemesis. And one of her office nemesis was her legit boss. You talk about someone that had enough influence, relationships, and power to make her life a living hell. And she did just this. She did exactly this. She took him off site. She said, hey, here's what's going on. He immediately guard way down. Obviously, he didn't take ownership, right? He didn't say, oh yeah, I've been a real dick along the way. No, but he got his guard down and he was able to trust her, and she was able to trust him as much as she needed to. 6 months later, to the date, 6 months later, he called her. He had started an organization. He had left where they worked before, and he called her and said, hey, I need a COO. I need someone to come in that I can trust and that can absolutely crush it. And I want that to be you. And I want you to name your price. He legitimately told her this. Name your price. And she was taken back. She said, what the hell? Is this really happening? And the more she talked to him, right, he ended up saying, he said, I have to tell you, when that night we were at dinner and you said, you called it out that we weren't getting along, we were fighting each other every step of the way. No one has ever called out like that before. No one has ever showed up like an adult and said, you know what, this isn't what's best for business. And that was the day that I had so much respect for you and I knew I needed someone like you on my team. He legitimately said this to her. My friend, she got a hell of a raise. She is doing work that she loves. She's designing her own schedule. She is absolutely thriving over literally a 1 hour dinner of her putting what she thought was her pride aside, right? And breaking bread with her office nemesis. But that's how she reclaimed her power. Because without doing that, she would not have that opportunity today. She would have kept going. He would have found a way to sabotage her success. And she would have likely gotten fired, just like I did, right? In my story that I talked about earlier. So that is the second step in the PowHER formula for success, and that is demanding your power. The last and final step to help you break up with this whole bullshit belief system that office politics means selling your soul, means having to do all the shit you don't like, means having to be fake and not authentic, is landing your power. And this is how you're going to execute with unwavering conviction. This is how you build unshakable confidence in the workplace as the badass that you are. This is how you dominate in the boardroom. This is how you close your own gender pay gap. Is these tools like this. I promise you, I was able to do just that, right? When I finally wrapped my mind around all these concepts that we teach in the coaching and consulting programs that we have, I was able to 13x my own comp package in 5 years. 13x in 5 years, right? And the whole concept of all that, I was just throwing darts, right? I knew that the corporate ladder was designed by men for men to succeed, and not even with malicious intent. Let's face it, for decades, it was only men in the workplace. Traditionally, white, cisgender, straight men that were in the workplace that had a full-time person at home running their entire lives. So that's the whole reason we have the traditional work schedule that we do, right? It's because someone's at home taking care of your whole family. Of course you can do that. Ladies, just think about all the amazing shit you could pull off in your world if you could literally go to work, come home, your whole life's taken care of. That's not the real world, right? And so when I was able to really start throwing darts, and I literally treated that last 10 years of my corporate career as a science experiment to make sure this PowHER formula for success, I had proof of concept that it could work not only for me, right, with the privilege that I bring with being the very, outspoken, aggressive, bitchy woman that I was, right? I got by with a lot of shit in corporate that other women couldn't. And so that was how I was able to make sure this will work for you. So landing your power. So anytime that you try something for the very first time, I promise you, you're gonna feel awkward. If you think about the first time you got on a bicycle, you didn't just get on that bicycle and, ride off into the sunset. You looked really fucking weird doing it, right? You're all wobbly, you're falling down. It was hard, right? That is no different. When you first try this skill, you're not going to feel 100% comfortable. There's no way around that. There's no leadership theory that's going to teach you otherwise. There's no magic pill that I can sell you today. If there was, I would love to be able to do that. But I wanted to make sure you have just that. So landing your power, your brain will fight this every step of the way. Your brain's fighting it now. You're saying, I don't want to do this. Brittany, there's got to be a better way. I promise you there's not. There's not a better way. This will get you out of that rut immediately. This is what's going to have you dominating in the boardroom absolutely immediately, get you the relationships you need, get you the influences that you need to absolutely build that career that brings you joy, that brings you meaning, and so much more money than you ever thought possible.